City Spotlight is supported by Consolidated Communications. CCI is honored to salute the cities and their leaders in the area, as well as providing TV, internet, and phone service to local homes and businesses. We live where we work and are proud to support the communities we serve. More information available at consolidated.com. We're taping here on May 29th, and we're at the 5 Mile House, just south of Charleston. On this May 29th, the dedication of the Commodore Perry Davis Barn is happening. We've had a couple of segments previously here on City Spotlight talking about this barn, and this is kind of a culmination of this project. Let's take a look at this feature here on this dedication of the Commodore Perry Davis Barn.
The barn that you're sitting in is the result of a dream that we've had for many years, and there's always been a oral tradition that there was a blacksmith shop here at the 5 Mile House. And so even back 20 years ago they were saying we need a blacksmith shop. So we were looking for buildings in the area that could possibly fill the role of a blacksmith shop. Then finally Les Dallas said, there's a barn down the road here 3.5 miles. He said, it's kind of starting to fall in, and you know, we might get the owner to give it to us. And so Les talked to him, and sure enough, we'll let you have the barn. We just made a deal to clean up the site. And so we began raising money. This was in 2017. We began raising money. And by 2018, we had enough money to get started. And we had a company from Galesburg, Illinois, Trillium Dell, and they're called Firmitas now. But Rick Collins from the company came down, and we had a contract with them. They're the best in the business. They've done barns all over the world, really. But they're not cheap, so we had to raise quite a bit of money to do this project. We ended up raising well over $200,000. We had 220 donors donate to the project. We had an anonymous donor give us $25,000 to kick it off. The summer of 2018, we were actually able to take the barn down. We sent all the timbers up to Galesburg to Trillium Dell's shop, and they reconfigured them, repaired them, replaced what needed to be replaced, and brought it down. In the spring of 2019, we began the project. We poured a concrete foundation, and March, Trillium Dell came in with all their equipment and with the timbers, and the yard out in front here, we had 3-foot deep ruts from the big heavy equipment. And Les Dallas, bless his heart, was able to, he kept working at filling them in and leveling them out. So then they'd make more ruts. Then they get stuck over here and have more ruts. So, but spring of 2018-19, we began construction. They got the frame up by April. And then over the summer of 2019, we had our programs in here. And the first program, the barn had no siding on it whatsoever. And the Old Time Fiddlers played. We had just the gravel floor. And then as the summer went on, each program, a little more progress was made on it. 2020, we didn't have our programs due to COVID, but we still got a lot done. And, got the sidewalk and finished our siding, finished the gables, that type of thing. This 2021, we finished up, we painted the barn, finished up the interior, got our exhibits up, and so we have the barn that we have now. So we're here today to celebrate that.
On this corner of 130 and the Westfield Road is this 1-acre site that is called the 5 Mile House site. And to me, it is a place of miracles. In fact, I'd like to rename it Inspiration Point, because it's inspired so many people, including myself, to do things that without thinking about it, we would have deemed impossible before the fact. This place, a quarter century ago, inspired a group of Coles County citizens to buy the site that was for sale and preserve it, save it from destruction. If they hadn't done that, I think today we would be sitting on the parking lot of a convenience gas station. this is an ideal site for that kind of project, I believe. But a group of citizens got together and bought the place. One family, Larry Bates and his wife, Cleora, came up with the money to buy the site that was for sale and saved it so that the rest of the group could organize themselves to get the money together to carry on the restoration project. Tom has already talked about the miracle of this barn relocation from 3 miles down the road to the east to this place. And of course the Trillium Bell company that we hired to execute the removal and reconfiguration was an amazing group to work with. They took it down, they transported it to Galesburg, the parts that were usable. They repaired the parts that needed repairing and brought it back, as Tom explained, and they shrunk it from a 40 by 50 footprint to a 30 by 40 form or size that we are sitting in today. And that is our legacy from 3 miles down the road. Now this blacksmith's forge and the bellows up here are the inspiration of Eric Gray and Brian Carey, who were inspired to develop a blacksmithing facility here, which we assume was part of 5 Mile House history back along the way. So here we are dedicating the product of an impossible goal achieved by ordinary people with inspiration generated by this place. And in fact, you know, if our story has in any way touched you, we invite you to join this group. You've seen the major players. We would welcome you with open arms to our band of dreamers and doers.
Dick and Tom told you what I consider to be the recent history of this barn. I want to take you back about 200 years, and this area was still part of Clark County. And Edgar County hadn't even broken off from Clark County yet. Over in Lawrence County, Indiana, it wasn't until December 18th, 1828, that John Calvin Davis married his first wife, Elizabeth Tolliver. Around 9 months later, they had a son, the first of their 15 children, on September 13, 1829. He was born near Mitchell, Indiana, and named after Oliver Hazard Perry, who was a heroic Commodore in the U.S. Navy in the War of 1812. I don't know if they even knew what his first name was. They knew Commodore Perry. Oliver Hazard Perry. And he also had a brother who served in the War of 1812 named Matthew Calbreth. And I had to study up on that a little bit to make sure I was getting the right Perry. Anyway, baby Commodore Perry Davis was only a few months old when his parents packed up and moved to then Clark County, Illinois in 1829. Can you imagine taking a several-month-old baby, putting him in? I don't even know if they had a wagon. They may have just ridden a horse over here. But Coles County had not broken off from Clark and Edgar County until December 25th, 1830. So stop and think a minute. You know, 1830, coming up on 2030 will be Coles County's bicentennial. So that's why I've got you back 200 years ago. And it really wasn't until the Black Hawk War in 1832 that this area was totally free from Native Americans, yes, excuse me, because they were still in this area up until around that time. The early pioneers from Kentucky and southern Indiana came to find this area still heavily forested. We think of Illinois as being the plains or the prairie state. But I even brought a map to prove to everybody that this, where we're seated or standing right now, was in the middle of the woods. Hutton Township was almost totally a wooded area. So when those and the farmers back then thought the ground had to be able to support a tree to support crops. They wouldn't have even planted on the prairie because they thought the ground wouldn't be fertile enough to grow a crop. But can you imagine coming to the middle of a forest and having to chop down every tree just to clear an acre of land for a simple crop of corn? And we're talking about one married couple with a baby, I'm sure families and friends and neighbors helped, but anyway, it was a lot of hard work. And I think early in his life, Commodore Perry Davis learned the value of hard work as he was the eldest son of 15 children of a pioneer family. He was listed with his parents and siblings in the 1830, 1840, and 1850 census records. He was evidently educated in a rural school near his parents' home in Section 34 here in Hutton Township. They probably attended the Whetstone Baptist Church when it was a log cabin north of the Whetstone Cemetery. That's where the parents are buried, in the Whetstone Cemetery. On December 26, 1851, Commodore Perry Davis was united in marriage to Miss Elizabeth Betsy Conley by Reverend John Bertner. She was a twin sister to Nancy Conley, and they were the second and third children out of 14 big families born to John and Jane Reynolds Conley, who were also early pioneers of Hutton Township from guess where? Lawrence County, Indiana. So she was born here, and Commodore Perry Davis was born in Lawrence County, Indiana, but their families were from there. A younger sister to Elizabeth and Nancy Conley was named Mary Jane Conley. She married John Strader, and they were the great-grandparents of my 89-year-old mother, Myra Joy Strader Coy, who is here with us today. In other words, Commodore Perry Davis, that had this barn built, was her grandfather's uncle. Does that make sense? Yeah. In 1852, Commodore and Betsy Davis moved to their 40-acre farm in Section 27. When they've been saying it's about 3 or 3.5 miles east of here, that's the location of this 40-acre farm. And they both lived there until their deaths. They had 7 children born at that location: John Wesley, Nancy Jane, Henry C., James N., an infant daughter, Charles Newton, and David E. Davis. Of that 7, 5 of them had descendants, and I tried to total up all the known descendants of Commodore Perry Davis, and I ended up with 12 pages of single-typed names, so over 500 people. And some of you may have known some of his. Do some of you remember Commodore Davis that lived in Charleston? How about Max Davis? Yeah, Max Davis was a great-grandson. Yeah, and Commodore Davis was grandson. Anyway, Commodore Perry Davis was a respected hard worker and added land to his original property until in 1880, according to the census, he owned 225 acres, which when you're working with horses and plows, that's a lot of land to take care of. At that time, with a larger barn, or larger farm, a larger family, and more livestock, he needed a larger barn. Probably using timbers from his own wooded acres. Some of the wood we're seeing right here around us came from his farm. And with the help of family, friends, and neighbors, this new large barn was constructed. And this barn, built in 1880, is the one we see in front of us today in a modified form. I've always been impressed by some of the structural features of the barn, including the huge boulders that supported the foundation of the barn. There are boulders outside here. Take a look at those. That's what the barn stood on. believe it or not. And then also, a unique feature are the scissors trusses to hold up the roof. I believe Tom found out from the Trillium Dell people that they've done hundreds of barns, and this is the only barn they've ever seen that had scissors trusses. Right, Tom? Which I didn't even know what a scissors truss was, but I'm impressed to know that this was a unique feature. And I don't know how these guys could have even built it. I mean, I'm sure there was no architect involved, you know what I'm saying? So they put it together with some unique features. Betsy Davis died of pneumonia after 17 days on April 16, 1888. 11 months later, Commodore Perry Davis was married to his second cousin, second wife and second cousin, Mary Jane Davis Dallas Davis. Also a native of, guess where? Lawrence County, Indiana. Her first husband was William T. Dallas, a grand uncle of Les Dallas. Did you know that, Les? And he was a veteran of the Civil War, and Les and his wife have letters that he wrote back to Hutton Township from the Civil War. He died, and her second husband was Alfred Greenwood Davis, who was also a second cousin. So her full genealogical name, which people like me have to keep track of, was Mary Jane Davis Dallas Davis Davis. And every time I type that into my computer, it says, no, you're repeating names or something. The second Mrs. C.P. Davis lived until 1922. So almost, 100 years ago. Commodore Perry Davis was a Republican and served as a school director in his district. He died of Bright's disease of 2 months' duration on his 76th birthday in 1905. So I have known people who actually remembered him and knew him. They're all gone now, but there were people I knew that knew him. His obituary states, Mr. Davis was known as a man who attended strictly to business, and by his well-connected business methods was enabled to gather a goodly portion of this world's goods together. He was highly respected and popular. And I think he did a pretty darn good job on this barn. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. I'd like to say just a couple of words about the barn itself. Some of the things that you can see in the barn. The original timbers are hand hewn, and you can see the hand hewn ones. And there's some that are sawn and look brand new. And these are replacements, and actually the configuration that we have here is a little different because we had to conform to building codes and things like that. Originally, the top timbers wouldn't have been there because the hay fork would have brought the hay in, and those timbers would be in the way of the hay fork doing that. But the barn there was quite a bit of deterioration in the back part of the barn, so they salvaged everything they could and reworked it. And the timbers that you see that are newer actually came from the Arboretum in Chicago, Morton Arboretum in Chicago. And they are spruce, and they had to take them down, and they gave them to Trillium Dell and said, use them on a project, we just want to know where you use them. So these came from the Morton Arboretum, so Morton Arboretum is actually represented here. In the original barn, we were able to salvage some siding, and the siding is on the first bay in the front, and then the new siding is on the back part. And the siding was all white pine, and the white pine that we got came from down by Branson, Missouri, the Midwest Timbers. But back in the 19th century, from the Civil War up through the end of the century, they were clear cutting the forests in Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan. All of the white pine from Wisconsin and Minnesota is coming down the Mississippi River to the Quad Cities. There were 53 milling plants in the Quad Cities that were turning out this white pine, and they were shipping it all over the Midwest, out west. So all of the early houses that are built here in Charleston even came from white pine from the Quad Cities. And the barn was the same way. All the white pine. A lot of the other, like the slats on the corn crib and on the roof, were sawn oak done locally. So we salvaged some of the siding, and then we did a double layer siding. Some of the interesting features, the original barn, you can see pictures on the displays on each side. This is a section of the corn crib. He had corn cribs on one side of the driveway and a granary on the other side. And he was filling, with corn and wheat. And so we have just a section of each to represent those. And then on the front of the barn, on the gable, there was, right at the top, there are 3 stars and the date 1880, and we have the original gable boards back here, and they've been restored by Dave Clausing here in Charleston. Then the other thing we did was put up one of the original trusses, the Sizzler trusses. The middle part of the barn was 30 feet. We have 20 feet in the middle here. So we wanted one of the original trusses up here so you can see how immense those trusses were. So there's things like that from the original barn that are here that, to represent. So we will be adding more exhibit panels and things as we go. So there'll be a lot of information when you come out for different programs and things. Our last speaker today is representing the city of Charleston, representing the mayor. She was going to be a speaker anyway, but she's with the Historic Preservation Commission of the city of Charleston. And she's going to say a few words, and then we're going to do our ribbon cutting. So, Kit Maurice.
Thank you, Tom. Well, what a beautiful day for this dedication. The City of Charleston's Historic Preservation Commission is charged with preserving and educating people about the historic resources within our city limits. We are fortunate to be part of a network of several other entities throughout Coles County with similar missions, including the dedicated board and volunteers of the 5 Mile House. Through countless hours of hands-on service and research, this site has grown exponentially and now includes the reconstructed 19th century Commodore Perry Davis Barn. We are excited to witness the growth and the myriad education programs and other activities that are hosted on site, and to live in an area that is so rich with cultural, historic, and natural resources. Congratulations to the 5 Mile House Board, Committee, and many, many volunteers who have made all of this possible.
The real one.
Now for the real deal.
Kathy, great to be here, and it's been really neat to follow this project from the start. Over 4 years of work. Tell us how excited you are for this day.
Okay, I'm very excited, and it's just been a labor of love. There have been times when we said, oh no, but it really has come together with the help of all the people that Tom and Dick mentioned, because it's just been everybody pulling together, and so it's been a great experience. We're glad it's almost over, but it's really been good.
This is already a special historical location here, the 5 Mile House. This is an addition to the location.
Right.
What does it do for the 5 Mile House? It's something else for people to check out?
Well, definitely. Our summer programs are wonderful. My husband did a good job of arranging those with music like we heard today, and all of the performers are from the area, and they've just come forward. A lot of them in here, like Luna Halos has been with us for years and years. And the programs are very illuminating. I've learned so much about Coles County from these programs. And we want to open this up. Well, we've had several community groups using this space too. The spinners use it in the wintertime. And one of our dreams is to open this up for weddings sometime. And I don't know whether that's going to happen, but that's one of the dreams.
What wows or impresses you about this barn? The history or just the physical structure? What are you impressed by it?
Well, initially, how on earth, with no electrical machinery, the originators were able to put this together. It's just unbelievable that they would have the skills and the tools to be able to do that. And especially the original barn did not have a brick floor, and we had that put on, and that really helps a lot. The performers all mentioned that it is wonderful acoustics in there, and it's partly due to the floor that bouncing off the sound. And it's just when I walk in that barn, I just feel a sense of peace. It is such a peaceful place to be.
I think it's safe to say here this is a pretty unique day, and in addition to the 5 Mile House, you're preserving more history. Talk about the importance of preserving history and why this barn is another example of why it's important to preserve history.
Well, when we see old barns falling down or old houses going to pieces, we forget about the people who lived in them and how they did their everyday work. And we take for granted about driving to the store or cooking on the stove. Well, when you go to a place like this, you see that wasn't always the case.
City Spotlight is supported by Consolidated Communications. CCI is honored to salute the cities and their leaders in the area, as well as providing TV, internet, and phone service to local homes and businesses. We live where we work and are proud to support the communities we serve. More information available at consolidated.com.